Top 10 Most Brutal Modern Fight Sports. War has been inevitable in life since the beginning of time. Animals have been fighting for food and survival, and humans have been fighting for countless reasons since the evolution of our species. The national, political, religious, and other elements of the bloody conflict have marked the violence in our blood. Violence is a big part of us, in fact, that we have created a sense of humor and created games to reduce our bloodthirst for evolution. The following are some of the ways we scratch our small bloody bite. Some may have originated long ago, but they are all done now. Here, now, to our horror, are 10 of today's most vicious fighting games. Featured photo credit. Muay Thai Citizen 10 Catching Fighting Curran Jacobs vs. Eric Hammer. Catch Wrestling World Wrestling Tournament 2018. Wrestling, for those unfamiliar with the term, is actually a combined form of wrestling, allowing techniques from wrestling, judo, and jiu-jitsu. It highlights both pins and presentations while focusing more on the power of wrestling as opposed to goals that focus on the finesse of judo and jiu-jitsu. Both words translate infinitely, gentle way, in reference to their focus on creativity over power. Of the three, where each win is called a drop, there is a determination to win one, actually forcing rivals in 3 sending games in a tie rather than 1. While catching wrestling does not carry the threat of concussive and blunt power damage, burglary and transmission pose a serious risk if it is not carefully executed, and to a large extent nonetheless. This, coupled with the need for downs, in order to overcome, benefits from capturing the combat zone and the area that represents the competing arts on this list. 9 Bare Knuckle Boxing BKFC, Full Fight. Estevan Payan vs. Omar Avelar. He recently returned to the US with the art of empty boxing. This new repetition, known as the Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship, BKFC, includes a new round, square. But otherwise it is the same brutal game that was banned in 1889, rotten rules and all. 2. The immediate potential for injuries to the fist is very obvious, including injuries to the skull, eyes, ribs, and hands. Broken hands by a puncher are more common in martial arts, a much higher risk in a non-punitive condition, and at greater risk for brain diseases such as Alzheimer's later in life. 8 Sambo Combat Sambo. This is real power. Russia is known for its cold, harsh, unforgiving environment, and the fighting games from there are no different. Sambo is not just a fighting game but also a military combat system as well, with different training programs for each version: military, sports, defense, freestyle, special. Sambo is a Russian base that means self-defense without weapons, and is actually an official military program in Russia. It is used by everyone, including soldiers, policemen, runners, civilians, and, perhaps, bears in unicycles. Vasily Oshepkov, karate and Russian martial artist who was one of the few non-Japanese in the world with a black belt, 2nd grade, from Jigoro Kano, judo creator, himself, met Viktor Spiridonov, a martial arts specialist who specializes in amputation and paralysis of the left arm. Bayonet building a new hand-to-hand combat program with the knowledge they have gained from their combat training experience. From here, they joined VSyobik, a regular Red Army combat training program under Vladimir Lenin. In this case, they combined their studies with Anatoly Kharlampiev and IV Vasiliev, both a broad student of world martial arts and the leaders of VSyobik, to complete their concept of martial arts. Therefore, Sambo was born. 3. The use of helmets and gloves may allow greater protection from increased brain damage that can be caused by other striking sports, including an empty fist, but an immediate risk of injuries to kicking, knees, elbows, deep judging, and movement finds room for Sambo in this list. 7 Muay Thai, USA vs Thailand. Max Muay Thai Ultimate 2016 Game 4 William vs Klakunsuek. Muay Thai is a form of extremely violent kickboxing that originated in Thailand. It emerged from an earlier, military style called Muay Boran. As hostilities with neighboring nations diminished, its military status refused to fight sports, and Muay Thai was born. It was always an important leisure time in Thailand but gained worldwide popularity in the 1970s and 1980s when Muay Thai soldiers gained a reputation for easily defeating alternatives. Known fondly as the 8-limb art, Muay Thai gets this popular nickname for his use of elbows and knees in addition to regular punches and kicks and other forms of kicking. Many ancient laws also allowed headbutts, but those were now banned. The game also contains a process known as the Thai clinch, in which the hands are locked behind an opponent's head to control their movements and bring a series of difficult knee protection to the face and occasionally throw them down. 4. The elbows and knees make the Southeastern Asian type of kicking sport more violent as a wrestling match, even if you are facing other forms of kickboxing. There are many types of kickboxing from this region of the world with similar rules, such as Kun Khmer and Pradal Seri, that can be added to the list, but in order to keep the types, Muay Thai, better known, has been selected as a representative. 6. Mixed martial arts, MMA, full fighting, Derek Campos vs. Brandon Gertz. 3. Bellator 181 mixed karate, MMA, in particular, sounds like a game in which rivals of various styles of fighting compete in the competition. Laws, or lack thereof, are what make this type of competition one of the most brutal in the world. An accurate way to describe it would be to combine the rules and grants of Muay Thai with catch wrestling, and thus bear the combined risks of both. But there is one more thing. There is no pinnacle in MMA, so any victory in the fight is found in the most dangerous act of moving that carries, or, more brutally than that, the ground and pound. The term refers to the act of throwing fists and elbows, almost always in the head, to an opponent pointed down. It's hard to defend yourself as it's brutal. A few of the most forbidden tactics in this game are kicking or kneeling on the opponent's head on the ground, elbow strikes, groin strikes, and dirty fighting techniques, such as biting, eye grinding, and so on. Without such things, almost anything goes. 5. Medieval War History, HMB. This is a medieval war game. The term, medieval, may cause one to question whether this is a modern sport or not, but the term actually refers to a modern sport that aims to mimic the ancient warfare of modern athletes. Sports basically include rivals who offer weapons and armor, imitating the ancient warfare as closely as possible without killing one another. Weapons sound like they can get rid of a lot of the game's brutality, but the axes and pillars hold you back. A competitor caught on a railway track by two opponents as one hitting his metal helmet is a good idea. The only excuse for this game is that the rules for removing a team member are merciful. In fact, hitting means you're out. 6. The competition is determined by the status of the finalists, with teams of 5 to 21 members. There is also a slight, but still severe, personalized conflict based on traditional competition rules. 4. Medieval MMA. The hardest KO in M1 Medieval. This game, as it may sound, is actually an MMA equivalent to HMB. Two battles enter the ring on antique items very similar to those worn by HMB soldiers. From here, a lot of things are the same as what would be an HMB game one by one, but with one big difference: you don't get out when you're hit the ground running. Winning past MMA is sought in the same way as hand MMA, release or delivery, without weapons. The brutality of this is well illustrated by Rustam Kukurhuev's vicious knock on Vitaly Kravchenko's first event by taking Kravchenko down and hitting his protective helmet with the hem of a shoe. You can see it above. Originally created as part of the lower card division side from the main card at the M1 MMA event, the attraction was so well received by the fans that the game has grown to where fighting medieval events are now being held. 7. 3. Eskrima. Good Arnis Fight. Live sticks. Incorporating the Armoury category is the art, national military game in the Philippines, Eskrima, also known as Kali or Arnis. Some may argue that these styles are technically different styles with a different focus, but they are all under a category known as the FMA, or Filipino martial arts, and are highly interchangeable. In 1596, and were completely banned in 1764, due to their very dangerous nature. The Spaniards tried to eradicate the FMA, as well as many Filipino traditions, but the natives found ways to keep their traditions alive and hidden, the ideas of the FMA hidden mainly by dance forms. Emphasizes weapons, especially modern weapons available such as various sticks, knives, long blades such as machetes, chains, and projectile weapons as weapons, and uses unarmed techniques as only one component to mix. 8. When you participate in the sport of eskrima, a form most closely associated with a single or two martial arts. Most, if not all, professionally licensed FMA organizations use heavy padding to protect the occupants from serious injuries, which makes the game decide that it is not so dangerous, but the version that FMA finds in this list is unarmed. It is not uncommon for FMA staff members to participate in double-edged competitions in which they beat the bees of Jesus with wooden sticks that are almost completely unprotected, usually without their hands. The unauthorized nature of these competitions makes them very dangerous, too. In view of these times, this Eskrima method is obviously more aggressive than sports, and it is incredibly cruel. Although not associated with the official sports league, there are a number of organized non-armed FMA competitions. There are many instances of a few people engaging in the use of unsafe weapons and other styles, but this, unlike the unarmed FMA, is not organized enough to make their game. 2. Calcio storico. This barbaric version of soccer is original extreme sport from its Roman occupation to the battlefield. Harpastum, calcio storico has been called the most violent game in the world. Although the previous entry on the list have all been martial arts competitions, the game precedes modern football and shares many similarities with American football and rugby. The ball is treated very similar to rugby or American football and is thrown into one of the separated goals on the long side of the field of the opposing team. 9. Calcio storico is supposed to be a wrestling sport, yet martial arts are still in use, and there are far fewer rules and protections than in martial arts. It contains no wearable protection and very few rules. No backup attacks, high jumps, or hitting a set opponent. That's about it. Lack of protection from injury, coupled with poor communication status, leads to an astonishing level of injury by 50%. This is what makes Calcio storico known as the most violent game in the world. It should also be noted that participating in this game is an act of love, as rivals cannot even be paid. 1. Lethwei. Although Muay Thai has already been used as a representative of boxing in Southeast Asia, Lethwei is counted differently, and for a very cruel reason. First, Lethwei has no knuckle, although it is used for folding hands, and in response to Muay Thai's nickname, 8-limb art, Lethwei is referred to as 9-limb art, as there is only one martial arts game that allows head scratching. 10. Those facts, however, are merely the result of Lethwei's number 1 spot on the list, his handling of the concept of knocking. In Lethwei, when a fighter knocked on the door, unable to answer 8 counts, instead of the battle being called, the unconscious fighter was dragged back to his corner, refreshed by the smelly salt, and given a chance to continue. War is not fought until a soldier chooses not to continue or until the war ends, when a soldier who has given up many times wins. In the case of non-existence or equality, war is determined equally. In fact, what we have here is a game with very rough communication rules, where what can be considered a direct victory of other fighting games is just 1 point. It's amazing how people survive this game, not to mention the fact that it's official and popular. Bloodthirst has been a favorite pastime of mankind, and with the popularity of the items on the list, that seems unchanged. We will no longer allow gladiator battles to the death, but some of these heroic athletes are getting closer.